Community and kind folks, welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome here to the show as we talk about all things role-playing games, especially Dungeons and Dragons and a ton of other of our favorite role-playing games. On this show, absolutely live. We go live on YouTube, Twitch. We have our own Discord server, so we have Facebook. So if you would like to participate and have your comments highlighted and everything, we would love to have you here. Okay. Now, just to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about this WTF, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're going to talk about the world phenomenon of the Netflix television series Squid Game. Yeah. And can we use that for role playing games? Of course we can. Of course. Of course. And as much of a highlight, I watched the dubbed version. I know there's dub or no dub, dub or a subtitle. I watched the dub version, so sorry. But anyway, yes, we're going to completely spoil it. We're going to take it apart. We're going to talk about it today here on World Building Wednesday. Of course, you guys know as well as I do that I am the self-appointed third pillarist of the role-playing community. I haven't been deposed from my throne yet, so we're going to talk about third pillar of exploration. We absolutely love, I mean, everything from traps and obstacles and such. We're going to talk about that as well, and then of course on Friday, on Future Friday, going to delve into science fiction, and there's a ton of science fiction that's out there that basically parallels a Squid Game and how much of an homage Squid Game the whole series brings into effect. Okay, so Dead Man brings up the comment. Idea for world building with Squid Game: elves running the game and halflings as the contestants, or you have dwarves running it and gnomes playing in it. No, gnomes would absolutely like. I think they'd probably volunteer. You get yourself some gnomes or like goblin grenadiers or something like this. Sounds really cool. No, but to be honest with you, there's there's a subtlety to Squid Game that makes it a bit different than, say, Battle Royale or Hunger Games or Running Man and a million other of these killer competition viewership style games. We'll get into it now. So for those who don't know, again, I have to say again, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. So for those who don't know, it is a Korean television series requested by the people over at Netflix. And I guess the gentleman that was writing it took like 10 years to write it. And he was like dirt poor by the time he was, trying to write this thing and get it done and get it sold. And finally, Netflix decided to buy it up. And the idea behind it is that there is a competition and people are recruited into this competition to make their lives better. For the most part, the vast majority of people in the competition are living a life that they really don't want, either by choice or circumstance. They are in financial straits, and of course, the not so subtle uh, mechanism, storytelling mechanism of Squid Game is that it's based around capitalism, and it talks about and confronts us with the rules of capitalism, and of course the results of success and failure in it are that it are the complete extremes. It's a death and mutilation or complete success over everyone, and then it's all the nuances. And I think one of the best things about this competition, there are 6 games that all the competitors must play in, 456 of them, at least this particular year. And they are there is a they are subtly drawn into it, this idea that they might have a hope of escaping their depressive circumstance, either by creating it on their own or it being created by others who are taking advantage of them. Or maybe this just they're just being ground up in the gears of the mechanisms of society and whatnot. And one of the brilliant things they did in the show in the second episode is that there was a choice, and during the entire game, they had three rules. And the third rule was the majority of competitors can choose not to play the game any longer. And I love the fact that they added that in there because it put a new twist on the forced competitiveness. You know, we've seen a lot of our protagonists captured, knocked out, drugged, and whatnot, taken to some island or put on a distant planet or whatever. But they're forced into a situation they never asked for. Maybe our protagonist is trying to find someone or compete in a deadly game to free someone else, and it's usually through altruistic through some sort of altruistic mechanism. But in this case, they are released from the game. And the beautiful part of that is we get to see the background of some of our favorite main characters, our collection of main characters that are taking place in the show, and get to see their lives when they come back to their lives, and why it is that they would even volunteer to be in these deadly, depressing type of games and be forced to take advantage of other people. And the the second part of the brilliance, I think, of the show is that they use kids games, and a lot of times when we have our heroes, our protagonists, in a situation where they have to compete in a deadly game, it's up to the world builders to come up with, like, okay, we're it, we're trying to embrace your um, the mechanisms of this world, and most of the time we um, we subsume our disbelief if we're given one thing that is unreasonable. When you do more than one unreasonable thing, we start going, "Yeah, I get it, but I don't believe this could be real," right? And we know a lot of Squid Game can't. There's no way you could get away with it. Hundreds of people being killed multiple times, all year after year after year, and just no one knows it ever. No one questioned things ever. No one's flown over this island ever. Okay, we get it, but the premise works because there's something simple about children's games, and children's games usually have very simple rules. And the beauty of Squid Game is that the rules are so simple that we remember as kids, even if we don't understand the game. Like, I don't understand what I've never played Squid Game, but I'm been young enough and played in schoolyards and things where we've had similar styled games, right? You have your usual cops and robbers, or I grew up with like dodgeball and um what we had done some pretty ignorantly dumb games. Like, we called one suicide. There's oh, what's the bouncing ball, and you stand in a square, and the ball is only allowed to. Anyway, we've played a frisbee saw. We played a bunch of games, and I know you guys out there have played a ton of children's games. And to expand them out to adulthood, it's really Foursquare. That's it. Thank you, man. Foursquare, yes. Although I remember playing with far more than four squares, but yeah, I remember playing Foursquare. I know you guys can come up with a ton of these schoolyard games that were just, some of them pretty ridiculous and whatnot. But the beauty of Squid Game is that because they're children's games, we know that there's a part of our brain that accepts a children's game, despite the fact that sometimes the children's game itself could be a little bit ridiculous. Like, King of the Hill. It's pretty simple. Okay, you find a high point somewhere in a schoolyard or in the woods or someone's backyard, and you fight to stay on the top, right, or something like that, or hide and seek, or things like that. And I think Squid Game would be. You could do multiple seasons. I don't know how interesting it would be, since they did a good job embracing their own concept, and I don't know if you could do it as well yet again. But yeah, I think there's some worldwide games that you could absorb. And I think in Squid Game, the best part of it was, yeah, I don't understand what Squid Game was, but I was like, I kind of get it. I get it. Anyway, you guys are mentioning, Mike Gould says a deadly game scenario, sort of like the prison break scenario, but with a timer, act or die, a sort of timer. Yeah, that's the other great thing about about the game was that they introduced all these people, and they're like, here are the simple rules: compete this by a certain time and go, right? You'll be eliminated. And of course, did anybody bother asking what the word elimination meant? No. But in the very first in the very first episode, we have ourselves red light, green light. And in a role playing sense, I love the idea. I mean, come on, we all can imagine like fey creatures, or the players go down into like into the nine hells, the complete lawful evil realm, and they're like, "Oh, you're visitors down here. Why don't we play some games?" And the PCs are like, "I thought it would be like a hellscape," and they're like, "No, no, no." What's the other thing about Squid Game were the colors. The it's There's nothing more shocking than having like guards, faceless guards, but they're dressed in like this shocking pink, almost chartreuse, whatever. And then they compete in these games that, especially like red light, green light, and oh, I can't remember, honeycomb game, where you're like in a schoolyard with like dirt and trees and birds flying overhead, and you're like, I guess this is all right. And then you mix that with like a lot of brutality and blood and all that kind of business is really great. Yeah, Michael mentions, says Predators is a good one. Hunger Games, The Game, etc. have done this as well. The Game, what a Michael Douglas, The Game, what a great. I I wish that was a series. That's a great movie. Even to the very end of that movie, I was like, I don't agree. I don't believe this. That movie asks a lot of you, and it's the twist at the end is pretty remarkable. Thomas Anderson says, I think the real issue is with proper enforcement over time, like a frog in a pot of slowly rising temperature, you can condition humanity to accept the deaths willingly. Yeah, I don't think it would take. Listen, we've had reality shows and YouTube channels where hell, people, you and I could start a 60,000 sub channel in a couple of weeks just by grabbing our own pocket change and going, I'll dare you to do this if you do that. Yeah. Hey Rick, oh man, thank you very much. By the way, side note about myself, and the show's not about me, but I did have COVID. That's why for 2 weeks the show was off. It My symptoms weren't as severe as my wife's. She got COVID pneumonia with it, but man, it knocked me out. Oh my god! There's there's a fatigue. At least for me, there was a fatigue that is overwhelmingly devastating that just got to me, and then I couldn't talk and whatnot. So, but yeah, I'm back. So, but enough about me. More about you guys. Thank you very much. Anyway, continue with TA's comment. I mean, how long did it take to outlaw most places to have a death penalty? And in the past, people would show up for hangings to watch with their kids. Yeah, yeah. Listen. We like to, in our modern context, we like to grasp our shirts and hold up our hands about how we are a better society, but it wasn't that long ago. And unless listen, there are proponents of just the death penalty that are not like, oh, we think it's to curtail crime. There are proponents of the death penalty that are like, yeah, I've got extra popcorn and Netflix and chill is boring to me. So yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I'm with you there, TA. Like they we have footage of people bringing their kids to hangings. That was like a normal thing. Like, hey, let's leave the farm. And I don't remember when the last uh, hanging, or what were some other um, anyway, my being live, my brain is just a little fuzzy. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, TA says, not seeing Squid Game, but I'm imagining a hidden game where the guards are given points for killing the players that have failed, and the lowest scoring guards are eliminated too. Ooh, now the show does give you some insight into the guards. Of course, the guards have symbols on their face. You've seen the pink tracksuits, and the faces, and they have symbols in their faces: square, circle, triangle, square, and it kind of goes in that order. Like circles are like workers, triangles are like enforcers, and squares give orders. Um, but even you can kind of tell that the guards themselves are equally part of the mechanisms of the game. And some have speculated that there's a before the people were recruited, there was a suit and tie recruiter that was going around to everyone playing this game, like in the subway and various places where they have these squares of paper. And some have suggested that if they picked the red square, they would become a guard. And if they pick the blue square, they play the game. I don't know if that's true or not, but it hints pretty heavily at that. And I would accept that. Mike Gould says stress, especially over possible harm or death, will turn the simplest task into drama. Games could be as simple as choosing a card, but a wrong choice equals death. And especially if for role playing games, death itself, while a threat, really isn't a very good storytelling mechanism. The threat of death is, but death itself is not. So Squid Game really works because you have a lot of people dying around them. And sometimes if the player's choices causes some other kind of damage or destruction or debilitation or limitations outside of themselves. Like, hey, pick a card, like the gods or something or whatever, just demigods are like, let's play a simple card game. And every time they pull like a tarot card or something, it's like, oh, pestilence. And the PCs are like, oh, like, damn, like this is real. Maybe something like that could happen. And also, what a great way to put artificial limitations on the players in a situation where they might want to compete. Like, for example, there you a great one is the concept of gladiatorial games, right? And you have you have your top physical combatants playing in a game, but then they say, well, this is going to be wrestling matches, and you have to wrestle owlbears and ogres and I don't know, oozes, or I don't something silly like that. And but you have to wrestle. It's like loincloth wrestling, and the PCs used to pulling out their weapons and their archery or something. Maybe they're like, "Ooh, this is interesting," but they can only win if they play by the rules. And in the instance of this game, especially by giving us that second episode where the people, by force are pulled into this game, when they're released back home and they're given a card, and you're like, listen, if you want to come back to the games, all you have to do is contact us and you get to see their lives. Then they've chosen to they've chosen to compete in the games. And much like classic medieval knights in a tourney, doing fighting with I don't know, padded staves, or you know um, lancing each other on horseback and whatnot. Having games like this, I think, is really cool idea, especially if you have like murder hobos, but you really want some role playing involved in it. I think it works as well. Yeah, I love the idea of like, like Michael say, this turns three-card Monty into Russian roulette. Roulette, yeah, yeah, yeah. Pick a card, any card. Like you're a arcane trickster, whatever. You're also 11th level, so what? Zamara says the most interesting part of Squid Games to me was the fact that even the guards, the people who had the participants' lives in their hands, had rules they had to follow or they die. And I think that's a great idea because listen, how many times have we seen uh, we have a big bad and their evil henchmen, and the evil henchmen somehow serve the big bad guy, and of course our hero gets to like I don't know if they're running and gunning and they're putting bullets in everyone's heads and whatnot, and they're John Wicking their way through the story, and we accept the fact that nameless bad guys dressed in suits and ties or whatever are serving the bad guy. But in this instance, it really was like when we saw behind the scenes when the police officer found out and snuck into where the Squid Games were happening behind the scenes. I was like, "Ooh, that's a kind of a cool way they wrote this." Like even the bad guys, masked bad guys, can't see each other's faces or don't speak unless you're spoken to or something. Hey, love to have you here, Rickard. By the way, and thank you very much. Ta says this almost seems to have that feeling of the dark forest theory, where everything is a hunting game in the whole of the universe. So the only way to truly survive is to stay unseen. Um, kind of. Now they make a point in the Squid Games that, especially with the first two games, Red Light, Green Light, and Honeycomb, that it was very much individualistic. Like on your own, you either lived or died, and there were ways they finagled around it, right? Like in the very first game, Red Light, Green Light, that you guys have seen the image of the giant uh 12, 15 foot robot of the young girl and a bunch of people in those green tracksuits. You see the whole people is the very beginning of the series. I told you it would be spoilers. And so, of course, Red Light, Green Light is the young girl robot. Starts there's a musical tone, very childlike, and you can move as long as her head is hidden. When her head turns back around, you have to stop. It's simple as that. Move when the song is going and she can't see you. When the head turns around, you have to stop. The deadly part of it was, if the robot mechanism sees your body flinch, a they call them either snipers or mechanical guns, just will blast you right in the chest or in the head. The problem with that, of course, is you got a bunch of people, and right next to you, people were getting blasted away. You have to stay still. You can't react, because then you react, you get shot, and there's a cascading effect. And of course, yes, you get to see the whole cascading effect. And the Squid Games is even filmed in a way that really raises the tension, especially with that second game. But in Red Light, Green Light, pretty simple rules, right? And you're going, oh, that's easy to get past. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Not if you're a human being, and it really tests the emotional fortitude, testicular fortitude of the people involved in it, man, woman, prony, and everyone else. All right, Mike Gould says death or harm in these games might not be for you. Failure might inflict harm or worse on another, especially a family member. I like the idea of having something that the players care about threatened and being chipped away. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and even TA agrees with that too. Like, there's something about the idea, like, you yourself may go, you know what, I'll do self-sacrifice. I'll martyr myself. There are things that we care about that where maybe we'll never bend on those things. But the games were designed, and you get to see a lot of the characters' desires, especially when they return back to the games, that yeah, their moral outlook is pretty flexible. I think something like this would be awesome in, like, a fiendish, like, one-off, or like a fey kind of competition, where the rules are very simple, but as the games, like in Squid Game, as the games go on, it's not just you. Sometimes you have to work against each other, like the tug of war game, or the walking across the glass game, and whatnot. Like, and the marble game, where it's not just you, but it's you and others. And the way those games were set up, where they're like, oh, you have to pick 10 people, and everyone's looking around like, do I pick somebody I like? Do I pick my spouse? Do I pick the weak people that we don't know what the game is going to be, but you have to pick 10 people. And it was pretty interesting to see that, especially when they get towards the ends of the games, where it's just like, you must pick a partner, one other person, and everyone's picking the person that helped them through. And it was pretty dangerous. Anyway, getting back to our co-host, Mike Gould says this could very well be written into Domain of Dread. Imagine all failed contestants being animated as zombies afterwards. Ooh, a powerful lich that's like, I'm assembling an army, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to get out of it, and everybody that dies becomes one of my undead. I love that. I love that. Zamar says, also, to respond to the hanging thing, it was also, theory, meant to act as a teaching message for those around. The crimes was announced before the hanging, so you knew why they were hung. I agree with that. It's kind of like why a lot of Aesop fables feature death or worse. Yeah, they did. There were the we can go back even further with like the a lot of the Greek and Roman tragedies and about the gods and demigods. They were lessons for people, especially young people, like and for the public as well. Hey everyone, this person, I'm just making up something, like this person was a horse thief. Everyone gather around, we're going to hang the horse thief, we're going to read out the reason why they were hung. Hey, this is a message to send to you and everybody else, don't be a horse thief, right? And that was true. Now, were there people that were just like, hey, I just want to be here to watch people get hung? Of course, for entertainment purposes, but it was a message to everyone else. And as in Squid Game, in a strange way, the games themselves and all the participants, it the whole show to us as the viewer was a message as well. Like how because the majority of people could decide to end the games, and they what it was at one point in the show they say like 93% of the people decided to come back to make a better life for themselves, really goes to show you like there, despite the fact that we all think we're on this high pedestal of superiority when it comes to our ethics and our morals, that it doesn't take too much to erode that away. We of course see this in a lot of post-apocalyptic stories, right? Where once society and the rules are gone, what rules, if any, do you follow? What internal thing tells you not to do this thing, even though it might increase your chances of survivability or success or superiority over others? You know, how far do you take it? And yeah, yeah, Squid Game, pretty fun, pretty cool, well filmed. The tension level in that show is extremely high, and they did a really good job with it. Thomas Anderson says it sounds like the only way to avoid this sort of failure situation is to start way at the beginning, realizing that you cannot comply your way out of it, and stop it as soon as you realize it is it is realize soon that it is Biji. I'm thinking that I get what you're saying. And yes, and actually in the very beginning of the here's the thing. They actually, this is what I think makes it brilliant. They hit you over the head quite a bit. Oh, I get it. But the one thing they hit you over the head with on the show is not only is it deadly, but everybody who chose not to be in it is changed their minds to come back. They saw people they didn't know that were all in theoretically all in the same situation, and they get popped off one by one. Bang, 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 bang. Red light, green light, and it's like the ones that survived. You'd think like, okay, I crapped my pants. There's no reason for me to participate in this. But then when they go back to their lives, and 93% of the people come back. At that point, it's like, mm, they were willing. At this point, most of them were willing to do some pretty nasty things. Ta. So yeah. Now, as far as using this for role playing purposes, um, as like for example, we can come up with like an artificial, like the players, the PCs, and the antagonists are like maybe you could have rival it would be the rival adventuring group kind of thing, right? Where you might have like the uh, a minotaur on one side, and you have like a naga somewhere else, and then you have like the little hobgoblin group or something, and they might make some strange bedfellows, and also you gotta have a bunch of crunchies who get capped off in the games, and then you establish rules, and some of those rules, as we saw in Squid Game, some of the rules might just be personal ability, like I don't know, like hopscotch or something. I'm trying to think of other kids games that weren't in Squid Game, but like maybe there's some kind of hopscotch where you just have to jump from pillar to post. But of course, if you fall down in like spiked pits or acid or lava or some craziness like that, right? Bottomless pits or something. And that might just be, oh well, my character's just physically able to navigate through this thing, and maybe you can help allies if they miss a roll, then you get a little help action to grab their wrist or grab them by the lapel of their shirt so they don't fall off or something like that. But then as it goes on, there might be a need to decide to sacrifice someone to achieve a goal. Like we've seen competitive shows, the Survivor shows, the Expedition shows, Spartan games, Tough as Nails type shows, where like, oh, we've got to get over a 12-foot wall. Someone's got to be at the bottom, right? Or one person has to keep their foot or their hand on a particular mechanism to keep the drawbridge down or something for everyone to cross. But if that person's left behind, what happens? And then and then you start making things more deadly. Like someone's got to put their hand into a box where their hand starts to burn, a la like Dune or something. That person suffers to allow maybe allies to achieve something else. And that would be pretty interesting to have like who sacrifices them, who chooses to sacrifice does a player choose to sacrifice their weakest member? How do you know who to sacrifice? That kind of thing. So I love it. Zamar says the ending moral of Squid Games. Okay, all right, here we go. One, human greed for advancement will hurt others. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's at no point did they ever give the idea that it was a win-win situation. I'm sorry. There was a win-win. There were a number of win-win situations, but the competitors didn't realize it. There was a point when the players got out of the game, and one of them is like, "Man, I don't have any money to get across town. I could use some money to get on a bus." And the other one is just like, "Wow, I'm down to my last couple of yen or whatever it was," and he just hands it over to the other guy so he could get a bus ride. And what I loved about that part was like the greediest guy in the show, when he's back home, is just like, whatever. The money's not important, right? Because he's thinking about he owes so much money to other people through his own inadequacies and deceptions that the little bit amount of money he had didn't matter, so he just gave it away. And yet that wasn't part of the game. Kind of weird thing. But yeah. Okay, so going on with Zamar's comment. Okay, two, hell hath no fury like a woman's scorn. Ooh. Yes, yes. There is a video by the New Rock Stars, and another one that does an analysis of it by the Real Rejects, and they go over some of the scenes. And yes, oh, you let me hug you. Let's walk across this glass and let me hug you. All right. Zamar says number three: the extreme ends of human greed both produce discontent. We're going to talk about that in Future Friday as well. But they make the analogy that the extremes of greed, the person who has nothing and the person who has everything, are more alike than we think they are. That, and even in the the television show, they show you, the richest man in the world is looking down on a drunk, dying, homeless man, and is like, I'll play one last game with you with this person. I'll give you till midnight that I'm right and you're wrong, and see if somebody goes and helps this person out, right? And who does it, and why would they do it? And in the show, there are various characters that try to show some compassion, but they're being ground up in the mechanisms of the game, and it's like, that compassion doesn't, how much value does that compassion have? How do you put a number on it? It's pretty interesting. Michael says Squid Games is survival by compliance versus Mad Max, which is survival by non-compliance. One is regulated, lawful. The other is might makes right, chaotic. Yeah, I wasn't sure how to do this, but I so, someone had a literary theory video, and I don't know where to find it, talking about Easterns and Western stories and Northern and Southern stories. And it came about, it was the idea of using chaos to fight law, using law to fight chaos, law supporting law, and chaos supporting chaos. It's complicated, and that's why I never did a video series about it. But it was the idea of like Mad Max slash the Western story, where there is a lawless land, chaotic, and might makes right, versus an Eastern story, a classic Tale of Samurai, which is lawful, right? And they're both just as deadly, but and I like the idea of using using that as a story mechanism. Mm-mm-mm. But I definitely agree with you there, Mike. Zamar says, "P.S. I didn't like I didn't like that girl at all, but she went out like a true G. Yeah, yeah. Got newfound respect from me. Yeah, she was played a little bit too over the top. That's kind of a from our Western standards. It's a bit of an Eastern trope to have the a little bit of the annoying, high pitched, almost jovial, jester like character in these stories. But it did bring about the idea like there are when you have nothing, there is a way to bargain, and some people bargain with their bodies and bargain with other people's lives and whatnot, and how that kind of like switching sides and using what you have to get what you want doesn't necessarily mean that you're on top, that you're abusive, but maybe you're pushed into a situation where that's the only thing you do have, and it's not by choice, it's by trying to like reconcile who and what you are. So pretty interesting. Thomas Andrews says, I would say this feels like someone seeing society degenerating in much the way the rat culture does in the rat utopia experiments. I would say that I mean, like we've heard the example of crabs in a barrel, right? Like you could stack a ton of crabs in a barrel and none of them can get out because the crabs can't work together or they don't. So each crab itself individually is trying to get out of the barrel, stepping on the backs of the other crabs. And so they keep pulling the other crabs down to get out. And so that's why you could put crabs in a barrel and they never get out of it. Excuse me. So, yes, very, very much so. Now, the thing is that the first like one, two, 3.5 games are you see the people working together. Like we get to see our core group of 6 to 8 characters that we start to like learn a lot about, start to attach ourselves to, and we get to see that like working together does help. That there is you can get ahead. It's not always kill or be killed, right? There is a mechanism whereby we can survive deadly situations, and in life, the same thing. That we're not all islands unto ourselves. Some people go straight to it's me and f all of you. Like some people went straight to that from the very beginning. Others had a high moral code, and they were like, "Look, I can't. I'm in these games, and I'm trying to do good, but I don't want to sell my soul." And they get eliminated as well. And the show doesn't really come with a specific answer about trying to get ahead in life, but it does say, it as a reflection on ourselves, we can say, what would we sacrifice? Who would we hurt? What would we give up to get what we want? And I think the show does a really good job at explaining it, developing it. Z's like, yeah, they both says I disagree. They are both might makes right. The question really is what makes might. Yeah, a lot of money, and dangling. Because remember when everyone heard about the third rule that they could leave. If you notice, if you watch the show, they were like, wait a minute. Yes, the majority of you, if you decide to leave the games, you're perfectly fine. We'll take you back home. No big deal. But before they answered the question, really, they brought down the big hollow piggy bank and start dumping money into it. And yeah, if it wasn't for dangling a little bit of hope, this the slight chance of the hope, and putting it in front of people's faces and going, oh yeah, oh sure, you can get out of the rat game, but here's some cheese. Oh, by the way, if everyone gets eliminated, you get more cheese. Right? That was really great. Oh man, take your time there, Rickard. You're all right. You are all right. All right, let's get back. Mike says, yeah, there's no rule set in Mad Max. There's no if the majority rule. it's pure chaos. Squid Games is all about a miniature society with a hyper rule set. I now see I have to agree with that. I get where it's not that we're disagreeing. I think we are coming at this from different points of view, but I still like the idea, right? Like in this in a chaotic world, sometimes when we're trying to live our own lives, we're trying to get jobs and family and succeed and things like that. Sometimes we don't know what the rules are. You know, we have a boss that somehow doesn't like us, and we don't know why. We can't get ahead. We try to apply for certain jobs, and we don't know why we're being turned down for a particular job. S- uh, Things happen to our loved ones that might cause us to have to rethink our advancement in our own lives. Do we stop advancing ourselves to care for a loved one or something? And we don't know why these things are happening. And then don't grab the D&D dice and our classic six and start rolling them into our lives and have illnesses, car accidents, economic spikes and downturns, and weather events, and flat tires, and food poisoning, and your pants rip or so, silly things like that. Ink pen opens up in your pocket, like dumb stuff like that happens, and we're just like rolling our eyes at life, like, oh my goodness, what did I do? What did I? And we try to superimpose rules on a thing that might be chaos, whereas in the Squid Games there were rules, and as you noticed, even those rules weren't as ironclad as we thought they were, because there were people circumnavigating the rules. There were people trying to get over. The guards were doing their own thing. You had the people in control that would change a rule in midstream. I taught the glass bridge. Oh, well, let's turn the lights down and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, wait a minute. Yep. Mm-mm-mm, mm-mm-mm. Thomas Anderson says, basically, if this is a win money, the biggest funding organization would be a government reserve that can just print out more money when they want to. Well, listen, this, like I said, the premise, the ask of the premise is one in which we have to go like, I don't really see this happening, but that's the point of the premise there, TA. And when they start dumping all this money, you're going, I get the visual, but would these rich people really be able to do this? I don't know, right? Of course, the idea is no, but or they'd be able to do it once, and a lie. Everyone learns every lie when it goes beyond one person. That's it, that's the real truth of the thing. But yes, pretty. Yeah, the winning the money. I think someone calculated into 30, it's up into the double digits and millions of dollars, like 30-40 million dollars or something in through the translation of it. But I honestly, I don't know what it was, but yeah. Okay, Zamar corrects me. It says, one correction: if they pulled out of the game, the money would go to the families of the dead. Oh, yes, yes, yeah. Okay, this is an important part too, because they didn't focus on this too much. And if they really wanted to, and I guess if they do a second season, they could. One of the parts of the game was, if the majority decided to stop playing the game, the money would be divided up to the families of the people that died in the game. In many ways, it would be like a restitution type of thing to the families that were hurt, family, friends, I'm sure, um, institutions or whatever they hurt. Like, for example, we had the one character that embezzled money, uh, Ponzi schemes, whatever. Right? We get that idea. Bet on futures, lost people a lot of money and whatnot. Life savings. What did he? He gambled away his mom's business. Whatever. So the way it comes across is that money will be then given back to those people in some form to account for their losses. And the people in the game did not argue the point that they could get to the point where enough people had died that they could give restitutions to their lives, which is what they were in the game for in the first place, right? Sacrificing their lives to get ahead. And so was that more selfish of them? Like, yeah, we could decide to stop, but we're not going to because we don't care about other people's lives. So that's an important part of that too. It's almost as if, despite not having the money, they made the distinction that the money is theirs and we're not going to give it to anybody else. So yes, yes, Z, yes, Zamara, you were absolutely right about that. I forgot about that point. And I love that idea too, because it did fade to the background because there was a number of things that happened that kind of faded to the background. And you go, well, wait a minute. If that's the case, then couldn't they then just so yeah. And if you think about it, the the, the decadent assholes, which another super weak part of the show, were the face masked Euro douchebags that were like kind of funding running this thing. That was pretty weak as well. But the point of that was like, I wonder if, because even they didn't dispute that. Like, it would have been cool if this was more philosophical by a bunch of the higher ups in the that were running the games. Like, they were like, I wonder if they're going to give the money to the people, because at some point in the games, do you think they ever made that decision? I don't know. That'd be pretty interesting for the players to like. Oh, by the way, all the sacrifice. Hey, player characters, all the sacrifice you made. Yeah, your losses will stick, but you'll help out everybody else that failed. Hmm. I wonder. Um, there is a rule set in Mad Max, one that cannot be escaped. It's just not a man-made rule set, nor is it subject to being enforced by humans. And like Mike said, what is the rule set in Mad Max? See, and I wonder if the perception of known rules has an effect on this fight for survival as well. Like, my rule is there's nothing more important than the humans. There's no resource more important than human beings, right? And we take a lot of resources to live, but we as a society, I thought I heard something. But we as a society, as people, are more important than any other resource available, because I think we are um, force multipliers in getting everything else that we need. When we get enough people together, we can figure out how to make more food. We get enough people together, we can make shelter. We get enough people together, we can learn how to travel far distances and build things and whatnot. And so that's my philosophy. But a lot of people were like, nope, I'm going to protect my family and f everybody else, right? Because my family is the most important thing to me, and everybody else can, get kicked to the curb. Now, in a taking this back into our role playing thing, if a powerful, like, you could pull this story for player characters, right? Like, everybody, every gaming group loves to have that one person that loves to play a warlock. But imagine their warlock patron pulls the other player characters in. You could play this with clerics, paladins, druids as well. Uh, Tieflings, doesn't matter. A lot of them have really built-in things into their backgrounds. Dragonborn, where a powerful entity tied to maybe one or more of the player characters' backgrounds pulls them into this microcosm of a game. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to run along the idea of a game, but it could be hey, this powerful entity says, I'm going to put you and maybe a ton of other people through this situation, the classic Hercules and the trials or something like that. Like, here are these 5, 10, 15, three competitive natured obstacles I'm going to put you through, and here are the rules, here are the ramifications, and here are the ways to get out of it. And what would you do? And I like the idea of children's, again, going back to the children's games and having like fey creatures or fiendish creatures or something like that, maybe a big powerful dragon or a lich or something, because they might be playing the game with the player characters in the idea of a intergalactic entity judging humanity. Like, they don't really care whether you win or lose. What they're looking at is, how do you play the game? And that might be the test, as well. Like, I know you guys talk about Mad Max, and it is it chaotic because you don't know the rules of society, or are there rules for survival they're just not written down. They're just not enforced by an entity. It's the post-apocalypticness of it. Like, you only live if you survive another day, right? That's the rule. And maybe they're trying to judge the player characters and society itself. The player characters could be put in a position where they have to convince or re-educate people who, or maybe there are commoners. This would be pretty funny for murder hobos. Commoners are put into the people they offended are put into these games who get to make choices that severely affect the player characters. The very way the player characters, knowing that they are, I know I'm 11th level warlock or something, and I can take advantage of common folk. Maybe they are put in the same position to press a button and take care of them. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see. Let's see. TA says, in a real situation like Mad Max, it would be the laws of physics. But in the instance of the movie, it is the laws of what will make us the most money at the box office. I think I know what you mean, TA, about physics. It's like, the- it's, you know, it's basically like, maybe it's the physical laws of the world is basically what you're referring to. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to survive. You're gonna have to find food and shelter and water and things like that. Yeah. Ricker, you're so silly. Yeah, it would be hard to live without surviving. Yes, but that stretching it out a little bit, maybe, like, for example, in it taking Mad Max into the Squid Games, it could be, hey, here are limited resources that will not get you from one end to the other. You have to make it from one end of a place to the other or survive. It's the here's a pocket knife and a couple of matches, survive out in the wilderness, right? That that is a game. What is the Adirondack games or something, where they you have to travel so many hundreds of miles or whatever with dog sleds or something. I mean, we've seen that plenty of times. Get to the top of a mountain, the fastest, or dive down deep to the deepest part. We've seen things like that where it's man versus nature as the game itself, and that which can be very deadly. So you could put rules to it in a weird kind of way. Thomas Anderson says basically thought might does not make right. It just tips the scales, but it also requires a degree of luck, luck and might. The more might, the less luck needed, but there's always that factor to contend with. Um, you know what? And even in Squid Game, it still didn't didn't run smooth, right? They had to have the enforcers. You still had to have the front man who had the dark cloak and the dark Doctor Doomish mask on his face and whatnot. Like, you had to have these individuals trying to control the games and whatnot. And there was always they had a constant conflict with outliers, which is another thing. People trying to circumvent the rules, which you in a capitalist sense, you could say that the people who won in capitalism don't want other people. Uh, Adiron, it's not Iditarod. That's right. It's not Adiron. The combat for the chairs that sit on the porch. Yes, the Iditarod, the big snow sled race in Alaska. It's not the Adirondack. The Adirondacks are sitting out front of, like, Walmart or something. I don't. Lowe's warehouse. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Uh-oh. All right, Mike. He says, this is going to sound snarky, but quoting physics as the rule is a bit obvious. Yeah, yeah. Um, the I think if, well, okay, like, for example, in Squid Game, they were giving everyone food and water, or liquids and nourishment, and at one point, in the game, they specifically handed out exactly enough food for everyone that was left in the game, but members of them got back in line and got extra, so others were denied. Now, that was a rule, but the people who were running the games knew that somebody would take advantage of that, and it would start this riot, this murderous riot, where there were haves and the have-nots. It's the idea of feeding some wolves and making some hungry and getting them to go at each other instead of them going after the masters, if you will. And in some ways, the the physical need to survive made into a game is what makes Squid Game so interesting. So gotta love it. Anyway, Mike's is back on topic. A post-apocalyptic game setting ranges from the masses of Squid Game, yep, to smaller groups like Hunger Games, and then to singular gladiatorial settings like Running Man. Each has each has its given rule set, usually an audience, a set game master, and so on. Absolutely. Heck, I mean, how many television shows are there about people surviving in the wilderness on their own, naked and afraid and whatnot? And those are technically games because they get volunteers to do a thing to see if they can survive, and they get something at the end of it. Even though it's not really survival, the show Survivor is kind of like that as well. Thomas Anderson says yes, but laws of physics are what inspires many things, just like a traffic light. The physics law is it is falling to its objects not being able to occupy the same location at the same time. I'm not. Oh, okay, I get it. You're yes. The a red light, green light at a stop sign is designed so that two objects can't operate. Yes, I get it. I get it. You get a little metaphysic there, but I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, we need stop signs and red lights and green lights to control traffic. Otherwise, we just slam into each other. Although there are places around the world that have pretty terrible traffic situations. Anyway, TA says, but I do agree that Squid and Mad Max are deliberately elite law versus lawlessness. Yeah. Anyway, he goes on to say, and this does seem like an escalation on that idea of the Running Man, Stephen King under the pseudonym. Yep, and later the Hunger Games. But I seem to recall there were others before Hunger Games. There's plenty of others before Hunger Games. I would have to do a deep dive, but a lot of them long before Hunger Games were like a lot of 50s, 60s, 70s speculative fiction, and a lot of them turned in like movies and TV shows. There were a ton of them, ton of them. Zamar says now comes the controversial statement. Okay, all right, here we go. Squid Games provides a bit of vindication for my mindset of the world that the more resources are available presented to a person, the worse. Okay, let's see. Okay. The worse of a person they will be. People will take advantage of other people's desires for those resources to get ahead in whatever form they feel getting ahead takes. Um, it is I will challenge you. I'm not dying on this hill, but I would challenge you to say that is that a result of having too many or too little resources, or is that our fault? Right? Um, yeah. I mean, when you have nothing, I mean, we've seen homeless people give of themselves to other homeless because they're all in the same situation, right? But we also know that dangle the golden fruit above people's heads, and they'll like murder each other to it for everybody to get that one thing. And we've seen filthy rich people desire more, not because they need it, but because they want to create artificial scarcity amongst everyone else, right? Or use it as a measuring stick. You know, I have to have the biggest yacht. I have to have the biggest company. I have to have the biggest home, even though I don't need it. You know, I have to have something that's bigger and better than everybody else. You know what I mean? And so absolutely. And I do agree with you there, Rickard. I'll get your comment in a minute. Zamara says, which reminds me as well, the edge scene revealed a hidden rule of the game. Each person had a value. You made money when that person was eliminated. Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. When they started like when they started killing each other, and as they literally murdered somebody in front of everyone that was in the game. This is where they would sleep and they would get some nourishment and whatnot. And then you see the piggy bank gets more money dumped into it when they announce the death of that particular player, and it's just like wow. Now, mind you, of course, there's a lot of things that Squid Game did. For example, um, part of this is for international audiences, but it also in the game, everyone had a number, and it's far easy to look at somebody as a number when because numbers are not personal. But then many of the characters started introducing themselves to each other. Hi, what is your name? What's my name? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Blah blah blah. And they start knowing their backgrounds, and value was put on how much we intrinsically start putting more value on a thing, on a person and a thing. The more we know about it, the more we're invested into it. And does that mean that we only care about people that we know? Just because someone's faceless doesn't mean that they're valueless, but we still do that even when it's in front of our face. It's crazy too. Mike Scholes. Black Friday is the Squid Games of our world. The things people do to be the first in line for products. Listen, we have okay. So here's Central Ohio. Today they're called Tanger outlets. In the past, it was called Jeffersonville, but today they're called Tanger. And anyway, it's these big outlet malls on the side of a highway, um, brand name products, cheap prices, right? And there's a ton of stores, 50, 60, 100 of them. And Black Friday, it just became this thing where a lot of ladies and their daughters would dress up in their pajamas because the stores would open like at midnight or like 2 in the morning or something like that. And it was so bad that at one point that the state troopers had to get people off the sides of highways because they would park on the highways and try to run across major highways to get to these places, stomping each other. We all know about people getting trampled, and it's crazy. But you're right. You're so right. Oh man. TA says, God, yes, especially due to lack of resources available. I hate to see what tech electronics section looks like this year at various places. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Seem to recall there was some canceling their Black Friday sales. Yeah. Just imagine, just imagine the bloodbath over PS5s and the new Xboxes. Damn. Yeah, that's I don't I don't relish the idea of what Black Friday is going to look like this year and in the future and stuff, especially with so many high end electronics and whatnot. Hell, we have the same problem in when it comes to weird things like sneakers and certain types of fashion items and whatnot. That influencers are peddling. It's crazy, but yeah, Squid Game isn't as ridiculous as the concept of Squid Game, the Squid Games. It's it doesn't take too much to push us to that limit. Not at all. Not at all. Um, Heck, we've seen that happen. They literally made a comedic movie about it. A Brinks truck was driving down the street in Philadelphia, or just outside Philadelphia, and the door popped open and money dumped out the back. And passersby were just driving and they saw the money come out and they grabbed up the money. And there was a whole big to do about what would happen with the money, and they picked it up and they're spending it and they're backstabbing each other and so yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. TA says these sorts of aspects are exactly why I have been working like crazy on my replicator level upgrades for 3D printing. Yeah. Oh hell yeah. Oh man, here we're at the end here. So Z's going to take us out. Now, I think we reached the end of this discussion. Remember, everyone, if you find yourself hog-tied and on the middle of the street, you may spit up a credit card worth 36 million. Just in case you find yourself. Yep. There you go, Mike. That's your cue. Oh man, so guys, we're going to talk about this tomorrow. We're actually. I feel like we can talk about turning some of our childhood games into these lethal Squid Games, right? We've seen some like red light, green light. We saw the games the hopscotch glass bridge. We saw a tug of war. But how about some other things like let's talk about dodgeball, foursquare, hide and seek. Um, oh, there's a slapsies game where someone puts their hand on top of yours and you try to and you have to try to slap the other person's hand or something. Like there's some um 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 uh there's a ton of other things. Too many flashing through my mind as a childhood. Some of you guys come up with ones maybe that we don't know about, and if the rules are simple enough, let's see what we can do with them. So that we'll have some fun with that for tomorrow's Squid Game talk. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. Ride eternal, shiny, and COVID free. Hopefully, I am. I could still have COVID, but I am not. It's been long enough. Some say 10 days, some say 14 days that I'm not infectious and whatnot. So we'll see. I get to go back to work today. So after being off for this entire time. So yeah. And TA's like bloody knuckles, similar to that slap game. Yeah. Yeah. Just razor sharp spikes on the back of your hand as the person has to slap the other and cut the hands up or something. Oh shit. Oh man, there's a ton of stuff. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for even stopping by. Lastly, as you can kind of see up in the right, it's a little hard to see it. But oh man, thanks TA. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. But the Kickstarter for the Level Up 5e Advanced 5th Edition is live now. Let's see if I can go over to um I'll bring it up. Let's see here. I'll do that. Why the hell not? Why the hell not? Let's bring it up here. And what is this? Sitting at 429,000 over 2,500 backers for it, and yeah, I'm a small cog in the big machine of this thing. So I'm really happy, proud of it. I've been doing there are some videos. I'll release some shorter videos giving us a little bit of a peek inside what this level up is. It's around 1,500 pages of material plus 3 books kind of in line with like there's the Adventurer's Guide, Trials and Treasure, and Monstrous Menagerie. The the part that I helped consult with is in Trials and Treasures, but 3 books similar in parody to like Player's Handbook, that Dungeon Master's Guide, Monster Manual kind of thing. But yeah, great to see this Kickstarter going. You guys go just go check it out, whatnot. Hope everything goes there. You can kind of hear it in my voice right now too, showing up. But yeah, I hope I think I can push through the fatigue now, but man, in the beginning, it was crazy hard. Crazy, crazy. There you go. See, not a problem. Not a problem. Let me get rid of this here. All right, guys. Anyway, have a great one, guys. Get out of here. I will see thee tomorrow. Peace.